talk about media, we talk about, of course, there are different types of media. The two big areas are what we call traditional media, which encompass things like broadcast media, as well as outdoor media, as well as direct marketing and direct mail media, as well as publications and printing and all that. So it's a big swath. When we talk about digital media, of course, we're talking about similar processes, but it's in the online environment. We have email as opposed to direct mail. We now have online television, so to speak, and so this messes things up with how we look at traditional television and what's an impression and all that. So there are a lot of moving parts here, but a couple things I need you to understand to make the process a little bit easier for you, and that is media is actually broken down more based upon media types. And the four media types we're going to focus on right now are whether the media is owned and what that means, paid media, earned media, and shared media. Now, these are terms that have been around for a while, and this has more to do with the traditional side of things, but just so you're aware, what owned media refers to is a media channel that the advertiser controls in some way. Now, in this case, it could be a website, right? It's our brand, it's our website. We have full control over this, and so this is owned by us. And we have a social media channel, maybe as an advertiser, we have a Facebook page or we have a mobile site or whatever this is. So this is media that we have full control over and can really get our focus of our media, get our message out there in front of people. And it's really about control in this case. Now there's some ups and downs to both types of media as we approach this. So the pros here, of course, is that we can control the quality and we can control the costs of how we get the message out to people, what that message is. There's also a long tail, and a long tail refers to how long a message stays viable. And just as a quick example, one of the things that we have with traditional media is a lot of times it's very short tail. For example, a TV commercial that runs for, say, 30 seconds. At the end of that 30 seconds, it's gone. It has really no tail at all. Now, it might have a tail now because you may have videotaped it or you may have used your DVR to store it, so that ad actually may be viable days, even weeks later, which once upon a time in traditional broadcast television, after 30 seconds, that ad ceased to exist. It was gone. It had done its job. So long tail really refers to how long does that media stick around to be persuasive in some way. And so with regard to owned media, especially on the digital side, a lot of times these ads and web pages have a much longer tail because it's not just a single event. It's an event that can be strung out over days, weeks, even months to be able to get this message in front of someone. All right. So the challenge, of course, on the other side of this is that for an advertiser to come out and bang their own drum and say, hey, we're fantastic, most consumers are like, yeah, malarkey. So getting the advertisers and getting their communication to be trusted is a very hard thing because most consumers look at this with a skeptical eye. They look and say, of course, what do you have to lose? Of course you think your product is fantastic. Whether it's fantastic or not is not the point. So it takes a while, by the way, for any new brand to get out there, for any new advertiser to get up to speed, to get people to recognize who they are and what they're all about and what the value is that they bring to the table. So there's some challenges. But once again, any advertiser can go and start a website and have some sort of a social media impact and get mobile stuff going. And so it's something they have control over. But once again, there's some challenges on both sides. Then there's paid media, and paid media is something that really goes back to more traditional models. Paid media is when a brand pays a channel to get exposure. So if I go and say, hey, NBC, I'm going to give you thousands and thousands of dollars to run my TV spot, then that's a paid media event. So this is commercials, print ads, radio spots, that kind of thing in traditional world. There's a lot of paid media. Most of it was paid media. Online, banner ads are paid media, search ads are paid media, email ads, sponsorships, all of this in which money changes hands for me to put my ad in front of people is an example of paid media. And press releases is another example, even though it's not as exciting and sexy as a lot of the other technologies that are out there. So what are the pros? Well, first of all, everybody can jump in. If you want to get your message out in front of people and you find a paid channel, then fantastic. You have an opportunity to do that. So it's in demand and it's scalable. With the technologies we've been talking about, a lot of times I can go out there and even as a small advertiser without a huge budget, I can play with the big boys. I can take on the guys who have millions and millions of dollars in marketing budgets and I happen to be a thousandaire. And I can still get my message out there. Maybe not as many times as they can get theirs out there, but once again, I can work within these systems. So that's kind of a nice part of it. But, getting your message out today, which is the name of the game, is a huge part of what we're trying to do. Now, the downsides, well, there's a lot of people out there doing advertising. And what starts to happen from a consumer standpoint, from a consumer perspective, I should say, is that eventually a lot of the ads that we end up seeing online just become annoyances or become wallpaper. We don't see them anymore because we just don't look for them. And a lot of times with websites that have standardized layouts, for example, there's always a leaderboard at the top of the page, that kind of thing. Eventually we find that a lot of consumers end up with what is known as banner blindness, because we just don't even bother to look there, because we know that in that spot, whenever we load that page in, there's going to be an ad. And maybe more often than not, that ad is not about us. It's not about our needs. It's not relevant. So we just stop even looking. And in eye tracking tests, you find that those spots oftentimes don't even get glanced at by people after a certain point. So it's important to understand that just because you can run ads online doesn't mean people are going to look at them or pay attention to them or respond to them. Once again, it depends on what's in it for them. It depends on the value. So, but it's a cluttered marketplace, which is the challenge right now. And it's also limited credibility. Let's face it. Consumers are in control. They don't have to look at your ad. They don't have to respond to your ad. The ad can be on the page and they can pointedly ignore it and look at all the cool stuff that they actually came to that page for. So being able to get your message in front of people and have them pay attention to it, you have to do something that's remarkable. And unfortunately, it's very challenging because there's limited credibility. And once again, depending on what you want consumers to do when they see an ad is going to depend on how effective it is overall. Right now, with banner ads or any type of online display ads, the average click-through rate, which means the number of times somebody clicked on that ad and went to a landing page or any other kind of home site, is 3 out of every 1,000. So every 1,000 times you show that ad, you might get 3 people to click on it. Is this stellar? No. And the other challenge, of course, is once they click on the ad and go to your landing page, what did they do then? Did they hit their back button and come back, or did they go do something else, or so where's the conversion? So the response rates have always been delicate, and they're just not so good. Does this mean that it doesn't work? Not at all. Sometimes it works incredibly well. Sometimes the branding that takes place from a display ad works really, really well. No one clicked on the ad, but guess what? People saw that brand. They saw it over and over again, and they got to be familiar with the brand and what value the brand brings to the marketplace. So things to consider from a branding standpoint is maybe click-through doesn't really measure much of anything. If you can get your ad out there and measure in different ways whether people recognize your brand and whether they understand what you do for a living, that might be good enough.